Hello. Welcome to the second hour of Mind Shifters Radio. And today is Thursday, February the 20th, 2025. And we welcome you to the show. We invite you to either press the little call button at the bottom of your screen, questions, call button again, and Michael will see that you're wanting to speak, and he'll turn your microphone on. Or you can comment here in the comment section. And we would love to hear from you and take the show in some direction where you need support. Otherwise, Michael has a plan of what he is going to present. And so if you want to talk or if you have a comment, go ahead and press that now so that we can get on with you. And I'm going to hand this over to Michael. Give him just a minute to plug in his headset. Okay. Welcome.
Thank you, dear heart, and welcome everybody. Good that you're here. And that we get the more time to share these awesome tools to look into the dynamics of healing, wholeness, health, well-being, what's at the root of all of the challenges that we as human beings have, and where is the solution to those challenges. So our objective here is to develop the brain cells to move into deeper and deeper understanding of just how this creative process that we each get the opportunity to engage in to move forward. So delighted that you're here. If you have a thought or a question, you know how to do it. Hit the call button, answer the little quiz that opens up, and then you'll see another call button light up, and that will give you the opportunity to say hello. So if you have a thought for us, we spend a lot of time talking about the unnatural condition of most minds that the world calls the natural condition, and that is that of blockage of truth. And I just came across a story that I thought kind of put an interesting slant on that. You've perhaps heard it before. It was written by a man named Jean-Léon Gérôme in 1896. And the story goes like this. Truth and the lie meet one day. The lie says to truth, it's a marvelous day today. Truth looks up to the skies and sighs, for the day was really beautiful. They spend a lot of time together, ultimately arriving beside a well. The lie tells truth, the water's very nice, let's take a bath together. The truth, suspicious, tests the water and discovers that indeed it is very nice. They undress and start bathing. Suddenly, the lie comes out of the water, puts on the clothes of truth, and runs away. The furious truth comes out of the well and runs everywhere to find the lie and get her clothes back. The world, seeing the truth naked, turns its gaze away with contempt, embarrassment, and rage. Truth returns to the well and disappears forever, hiding there in shame. Since then, the lie travels around the world, dressed as the truth, satisfying the needs of society because the world, in any case, harbors no wish to meet the naked truth. I thought that was such a simple way to recognize how the evidential human mind can be locked into a state where truth becomes blocked and misunderstanding and lies become the norm. And basically recognizing that fear and hostility pollute the very mechanism that you rely on for what you call your intelligence, your awareness, your moral stand in life. And many people teach that suffering is just part of life, and that all of our attempts to avoid suffering make it worse. And when people get trapped in that lie, they unconsciously lend their creative power to the lie. And then, not wanting to face the naked truth, as Jean said, not wanting to deal with what's really going on, the mind plays this game of blame. Negative feelings, I would offer, hostility and fear, a polluted mind, are not natural for a human being. It's become the norm, but it's anything but natural. And that is the pathological life that so many people live without forgiveness. So negative feelings are anything but natural and normal. And when we attempt to escape those feelings and the thought disorders behind them, that's when we create pathology within ourselves. And the objective here is to heal every pathology, to return to the truth of who we are by recognizing the signals of any form of hostility or fear, and to remove those energetic patterns, literally, not only from the genes which we inherited that sadly are too often polluted, to develop effectively the skill of literally being able to reach into the very depth of your own energy system, to the very bottom of the well. Learn to access the energetic patterns that are there, not by projecting them into the brain's image of someone else. And basically, when we live in denial, when I think or speak as though something outside of me is the cause of what's moving inside of me, the goal that I hold in that given moment can reach energetically into the depths of 20, 50, 100 generations ago, and the unresolved patterns of those lives, and bring those energetic patterns through resonance up forward, and use those energetic dynamics to build the perceptual constructs of our minds. And the diseased state of perception is a reflection of the diseased state of physiology. There's an interesting bit of actually kind of sad research that was done back in the 1950s. This happened in Russia. There were conjoined twins born. Their names were Masha and Dasha. You may have heard of them. And being conjoined, they shared the same blood system, the same circulatory system flowed in both of the girls' bodies. Their mothers were, or pardon me, their mother was told that her twins had died after birth, and that was not what happened. They were taken to an institute near Moscow and basically were used as an experiment. They were joined at the waist. So, the whole belief in the bacteria, the virus, and such, obviously the two girls would share every disease that either one of them happened to have sourced within them. But what they found was that wasn't true. Yes, they share the same bloodstream. So if, let's say, for instance, a bacteria that was associated with a particular disease went into one of the girls, it obviously circulated through the energy system of both of the girls. And yet the two girls reportedly were quite different. Dasha tended to function in a short-sighted way, was prone to colds, and she was right-handed. Her sister, joined at the hip, quite literally, smoked occasionally, but had a healthier constitution, had higher blood pressure than her sister, and had good eyesight, and instead of being right-handed, was left-handed. And the reason I bring that up is when you look at the reports, it opens the space for really looking into what's behind everything that we call so-called physical disease. Now, the two girls reportedly did share some of the same illnesses, but other different health patterns in one girl compared to the other really presented a mystery. In some cases, one became ill with what was called a childhood disease, like measles. The other girl didn't get the measles. Now, obviously, the measles bug, so to speak, was in both of their bodies, their collective bloodstream. How is it possible that they didn't both get measles? Obviously, there's more to getting the measles than the so-called bug affiliated or associated with measles. Remember, we've talked in the past that where there is a toxic energy that produces a resulting physiology, that toxic energy creates degeneration on a cellular level, and that cellular degeneration gives rise to a cleanup crew, gives rise to the expression of reducer organisms. Now, this phenomena, where the measles is an example, apparently was seen over and over with the two girls, with flus, colds, other childhood diseases. They experienced separately. And so obviously, the power to cause infectious disease was not in the bug. Why would one of these girls suffer from a particular disease while the other did not? And our offering is the work of Yeshua, 2,000 years ago, when properly understood from the Aramaic language, gives us the answer, tells us what's going on. Once again, my favorite quote from the scriptures: in the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh. Now, these two girls had their individual and separate minds. They thought differently. They functioned differently. They engaged in different mind energy from each other. And what part, we recall what we shared yesterday from Max Planck, where he speaks about, I'm a scientist. Like, I'm a hard scientist, says Max Planck. That's what I've spent my whole life doing. And I've never met a thing called matter. That behind matter, he says, there is a, quote, intelligent spirit that draws these quantum waves together and produces what appears to be the world of matter. If one lives in ignorance separated from the self, which is the active presence of love, separated from the mind of active present love, then obviously one mind separated from that, if mind energy becomes flesh, if mind energy literally, as the quantum physicists are saying, introduces into the tissue structure certain energetic patterns, and those energetic patterns are of a dis-ease nature, then that physiological system is going to experience that particular dis-ease. And the world tries to explain that by the world of matter, but this one simple experiment of Masha and Dasha obviously tells a whole different story. And we need to wake up to the truth of how we function and recognize that, well, thought is not life itself. Thought is the energetic wave, I think, that Max Planck was referring to, that tends to pull these quantum energetic packets of energy and put them into a particular form of expression, some of them based in health and some of them of a dis-ease quality, a dis-ease nature. And the main offering here is to recognize, if you come back to Yeshua, put this whole presentation so far into Yeshua's stated purpose for doing what he did. And you remember, he didn't say, I'm here to bring you religious doctrine and dogma. He said, I'm here to bring you life. Life more abundantly. And if you have not discovered yourself as love, and if in the moments where you lose the pleasant sensations that we call emotions in your physiology, based in love, then you better find your human life and bring it back into expression, or the tendency is going to be to reorganize, pay attention to that word, reorgan, change the organic structure. If life is, and I'll offer the best definition I've come up with in my work over the last half century or so, is that life is the active presence of love flowing through a cell. And one who has not discovered themselves as that presence of love tends to function out of the mind energy that's already stored within the genes, tends to simply replay whatever patterns are in the structure. And the patterns in the structure, there's kind of this two-way street that happens. The patterns that are in the structure literally are an energetic influence that resonate or draw to us experiences. You remember I've talked about Marcel Vogel and his Delaware camera, that with which he was able to take a picture of the high energy waves that leave the mind when we think a thought. So literally everything that moves in us, and the more intensely it moves in us, the more intensely the energy wave is going to be that reaches out from us, creates resonance, and pulls into us experiences. And then vice versa, we walk into a world of energetic experience, and if there is a matching frequency enough that in us that maybe is 20 generations old, maybe it hasn't been surfaced, has been resonated, hasn't been put into activity for 20 generations, but we happen to go into an environment where that energy is present, and then through the law of resonance, remember the law of resonance is the law of energy exchange. Remember the example of, I take a middle C tuning fork, I hit it on a desk, I put it near a second middle C tuning fork. Now that second tuning fork has no choice. It's a pure energetic exchange that happens, and the second tuning fork begins to vibrate. So we have this interactive world that we live in that both resonate, and if there's an experience from 20 generations ago that's never been resonated in anybody in your bloodline in 20 generations, and you go into an environment where that energetic pattern is present, Remember, the middle C tuning fork, when I hit it on the desk, has absorbed a great deal of energy and starts to vibrate and radiate that energy. If I put it near the second middle C tuning fork, that radiating energy is absorbed because of the similar atomic magnetic structure, and the second tuning fork begins to vibrate, begins to move. So the experience from 20 generations ago can be called up into awareness. And if one doesn't recognize that it's something stored within their own carbon-based memory system, doesn't realize that it's something that's resonating from within, and their emotions are a warning signal that there's something moving in them, if they live in denial, if they live in dissociation, if they want to keep hiding those energetic patterns from themselves, then in denial, they instruct the mind to use those patterns to create pictures of everything and everybody else around. And whoever's handy, the mind's going to create a picture out of the energetic pattern that's been denied. And now we can live not wishing to look at the naked truth, but rather live in the lie. And what's the lie look like? You're responsible for what I'm experiencing. It's your fault that I'm angry, sad, afraid. It's your fault that I want to escape, or, on and on and on, whatever you can put behind the idea that it's your fault. The invitation of this work of Yeshua says, I come to bring you life, is, here's what I'm going to show you. You breathe. You accept the presence of breath, and if something has resonated you that is of an untoward nature, by the active presence of breath and holding to your human life, that will be dissolved in you. But if you hold your breath and therefore do not allow access directly to that energy, then that dissociated energy, literally that compressed energy pattern, resonated by this person that you're currently blaming. Remember that the last time you blamed somebody for that thing, and the time before, and the time before, and the time before, and the time before, and you sat and probably listened to mom and or dad blaming the time for all the times it happened to them. Who wants to meet the naked truth? But life is in facing the naked truth. Life is in getting safe enough to own, to open, to process what's really going on. And remember, processing means I bring this forward in the presence of breath and active love. Not I hold my breath, I keep it locked down, and I keep pointing my finger at somebody else and blaming them. So where some people will teach, that life is suffering, disconnection from love is suffering. And the reconnection to love means you have to reconnect with truth. And you look at this story about Masha and Dasha, and what was in the DNA of those two women, it would seem probably the same thing. So what would be the difference in those two? I mean, if we've got two children that are separate from each other, i.e. in physiology, and each one has their own experiences, then obviously different energetic patterns resonate out of the DNA in each of them. But when they're conjoined and they can't separate from each other, obviously the experiences resonate what's there. What's the difference? Is it the thoughts? Is it the access of mind energy and the capacity to access mind energy based in love as opposed to mind energy based in hostility or fear that makes a difference? I would offer that's one of the keys to this whole process. And when you look at the genius of this man Yeshua who came forward with the forgiveness tool, it's absolutely monumental. And so when we offer that tool, we suggest that you put the pen to the paper. If something untoward is moving in your mind, that you put the pen to the paper and you collapse the projected images of your mind that keeps you believing. If you're in pain, putting your pain into your brain's image of someone else and keeps you believing that the cause of pain is out there, rather than facing the naked truth and stripping the mind of all of its projections. The willingness to come forward, to bring forward, to come to a state of gratitude. There is a power in you that in Aramaic was called Rukudukudsha. It is the breath, she who undoes the effects of errors and teaches us the truth. She who, if love is present, delivers the active presence of love to the cell, dissolving everything that never belonged. To come to a point of trust where you're really willing and you see the benefit of living with the naked truth, because only when you live with the naked truth can you really access the deepest levels of energy that perhaps there hasn't been a person in your bloodline for 100 generations that has not wanted to face those dynamics. And remember that, in our healing through relationships work, the underlying purpose of relationship is to show us what we don't want to face in ourselves and support us in being freed from that pain. That's true relationship. Many use the shine of a new relationship for the opposite purpose and end up jumping relationships in an attempt to escape accountability for what sooner or later is going to be resonated within the context of that relationship. At what point does one become courageous enough to trust? Remember the line in the command, I'm willing to hear and speak the truth. I'm willing to be with this. Where most people attempt to escape accountability for their own internal dynamics. Without understanding that there's a higher purpose for relationship, many people use their interactions to retreat from life issues that they brought into the relationship from day one. To retreat from the misunderstandings, the confusion, and the trauma, perhaps of a lifetime. When relationships are used to keep unresolved pain at bay, rather than to create the space of trust and vitality to move through things that perhaps one couldn't handle on their own, that's when separation begins. How common in the culture is the statement, the honeymoon is over, where the willingness, the situation where the culture might say the honeymoon is over, the willingness to step forward and process and be honest and really look at the naked truth, not dress the truth up with someone else's clothes. To recognize, I'm feeling this in my physiology, this is mine, this is about me, and it's time to breathe. In that context, when one accepts responsibility and realizes that all pain is internally generated, of course, aside from cancel the thought, somebody punching you in the nose, all pain is internally generated. The mind can make pictures about how it's from out there, but if you haven't been punched in the nose, it isn't from out there. Having the courage to open the space to go there and consciously create an interdependent relationship where trust allows those energetic patterns to come forward and create support. The alternative that most people use is to resort to the childhood tactic of blame and fall into the generational power person cultural dynamics of codependence. You make me. And of course, that's the time to remember, if you've been through a particular painful reality 87 different times with 42 different people, if you are one of those, if you are Masha or Dasha, The painful reality coming up in one of those minds is going to create a different either state of health or a different state of disease in the part of the body that is yours. So if I can acknowledge I've been through this painful reality, 87 different times with 42 different people, and I'm the only one that was there every time. And sadly, many never awaken to the fact or grow up and move out of the attack phase of life, the accusation mode. And sadly, the unwillingness to do that leaves the work of healing to the next pre-shattered generation. If the purpose of true life, if the purpose of true relationship has been shattered in a person's life, and they refuse to face that, then the next generation of children bear the unlived lives. That was one of Carl Jung's statements. It's one of the most difficult things for the child is to bear the unlived life of their parent. So leaves healing to the next generation. And I just invite you to take a look and see if you're breathing. And if you're out there in listener land, if that's impacting you, is this making sense? Any thoughts for you? We've got a chat room there that you can make comments in, question, gee, does that make sense? No, that doesn't. What about this? Go ahead and make those comments, or, I see a hand has come up. Miss Celinda, do you have a question for us?
Oh, I always have questions and comments.
Well, let's go for it then. What's on your mind?
Well, this is really resonating, what you're saying, and it leapfrogs right on the past hour with Dr. Tim and Susan and me.
Oh, cool.
And when I was talking to Dr. Tim and Susan, I've mentioned to you this tremor that I have in my left arm. And about 45 years ago, when I was in Overeater Anonymous, I was listening to one of the cassette tapes, and the lady speaking on the TED, fear is just energy, get into it. And so, I didn't understand what that meant, and it's 45 years later or so, and I'm going to, this morning, I just went, bingo, because while I was talking, while Dr. Tim and Susan and I were talking, all of a sudden, and I was getting pretty excited about the topic, my arm started shaking like crazy.
Mm.
And I thought, two thoughts in my mind, as I thought, what's going on? I'm excited. I'm not anxious. I'm not hungry that I'm aware of, although it could have been. What is this tremor? And I realized that I have been pathologizing it.
Yes. Good catch.
And all of a sudden that quote came back in spades. And I said, oh my God, I bet that's what that lady was meaning. That life is just an energy flow. It's my patterns, my thoughts that become habituated, and I focus that determines my judgments and my goals and my intentions and my withdrawal or my approach or my attack or my compassion or whatever would be the response to the neutral place of staying in love. And I went, oh, when I am in a highly anxious state, body vibrates. When I am in a very excited state, I'm like a 2-year-old running around on tiptoes. You've seen that. It's excited and full of life and let's go get it. And I realized that it all hinges what I decide about that tremor in that context.
And tremor, of course, simply means movement of energy.
Right. And it's sort of, and it's funny when I was looking up, well, do I have Parkinson's? You know how you can get to awful life.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to go see if I can find an energy that I can bring in here to destroy myself with.
Let me be a second-year medical student here. But anyway, what I realized is just life energy and how we're co-creating beings, and we bring that life energy into form in a co-creative process with love inside of us. Now, I've got this all in the intellectual box, right? But I'm working on it, man. I'm working on it.
Got it. I hear you.
I'm getting it. I'm shoving, like Carolyn May says, you shove that down. Shove that down into your body. Get it in there. And I just,
Notice as you really tap into this, Linda, where the energy's moving in your structure and where it's being blocked.
It depends on how much energy is flowing, because it'll be blocked. Probably most, the first place it will be blocked is in my breath. So I remember when you state of all
the breath and the throat.
Yeah, and that's it. Because anytime I express, and it's not a neutral place, it's either highly positively charged or negatively charged, or I'm fear, or excitement because I'm in a discovery place or something. A whole breath. It's like when you go out and see this spectacular sunset and you're in this total awe. There's like that breath. It's almost like what you're talking about in your still point session where the breath gets suspended for a moment. So share that with me, what that means, what that could mean.
Well, my offering here would be, are you familiar with, and we talked about a little bit on the show before, the science of cymatics?
No, I have never heard that. I must have missed that stuff.
Well, when you get a chance, jump on YouTube and just put in the word cymatics. There are a bunch of videos there. But basically, it's a science of the study of how sound impacts, puts patterning to it, and organizes matter. So they'll have an electronic instrument, and they'll play a note, and let's say they'll have a drum with sand on it. And all of a sudden, as this note starts to come into expression, the camera, if you're watching one of the videos, the camera is focused on this drum with sand on it, and all of a sudden, the sand starts to move, and it organizes itself into this absolutely amazing, intricate geometric pattern. And then when the sound is changed, all of a sudden the sand totally restructures. Think about the word I used earlier, organize. What organizes our tissue structure? And all of a sudden, that same sand that a moment ago was this beautiful geometric structure of squares and triangles, all of a sudden it becomes circles. Its structures change totally. Now, think about, and you used the key word there, expression. Think about what you do with your voice, and the creation was spoken into expression. And the somatic influence, that's with the quantum still point process, it's going right to the core of where we literally, in many cases, sadly, because of our raging and screaming and language off base with love, literally becomes locked into and part of the physiology in that part of our bodies. and unlocking that energy so that old geometric patterns stuck in tissue that we would call sin, or energies that are off the mark, can be released, can be removed physiologically. And then add to this the understanding of the filters in the mind, that we have Rachma, where now love is present with this energizing voice and pattern. We have hostility, and if hostility is the active pattern, then we speak and perceptually generate threat as our physiology, or fear is the pattern. And so, when you sense this extra energy moving in your structure, that would be a good time to stop and go, is Rachma moving in me? If so, then you'll probably notice that the energy is just excitement. If hostility or fear are moving, then that's when you call it a tremor, and there's a problem here. And the solution is not in the tremor. The solution is not in the physiology. The solution is this coming through Rachma? Am I connected to my human life as I'm designed to be? Or have I blocked that connection, perhaps with an old energetic pattern coming out of my genes from 20 generations ago, an unresolved power person dynamic that now takes over my voice and literally creates this cymatic influence? And that's part and parcel of the quantum still point, is getting to the core of where those energetic patterns are locked in and removing them, giving the energetic impetus for them to be removed.
And this is fascinating because I was very aware when I was talking with Susan, Dr. Tim, that it was my terror at expressing what was true for me in
Right.
of an environment of hostility and fear. This very same energy happened when I was talking to Dr. Tim and Susan, and I recognized that it was excitement and joy, but there was also this tinge of, well, what if I get punished in some way for this? Well, punishment could be anything. Of saying, one of the ways that I realized that I can be punished is someone saying, "Oh, you're just too much in your head." That's a judgment.
And now notice the denial here. Remember our definition of denial: when I think or speak as though something outside of me is the cause of what's moving inside of me.
Yeah.
So notice my punishment happens when they say this.
Yeah, and where.
So that's denial I would offer. So I'll invite you, before you talk over me, I'll invite you to slow down a little bit. So just notice the denial and maybe bring that back to correction and go, I've had situations in the past where somebody said things like, I'm too much in my head, and what that resonated in me was an old power person dynamic of being punished. Right. And now I can breathe and I can undo that, rather than believe that it's what they said about me being in my head that causes this energy that I call punishment in me. And that moves it from the place where it's the mind evidentially shows us that the locus of control is outside of us. When I shift into the responsibility language, instead of, they say that I'm in my head, therefore I'm being punished, when I bring it back to, that brings up punishment thoughts in me. Did my power person punish me because of, being too much in my head, or whatever it is? And as I let go of that and shift my language to, and that brings up thoughts, feelings, emotions around being punished. I'm going to breathe into this one. I'm going to move this through. Now the locus of control is back inside of you. It's not out there anymore.
Yes.
And you can choose to do something different with it.
That's an excellent catch, and I caught it immediately when you said it. And I was going on what I was trying to say, and I did talk over you, which is my responsibility, so I apologize.
That's okay.
What I and I really feel you were talking over me too. Both of us were trying to say, but wait, because I was trying to tell you that I got it immediately, and that it is when I'm in my fear state, no matter how small, I'm afraid that I am going to get possibly disapproval because I want to prove
Mm-hmm.
it, right? But
Yeah.
when in my excitement state, I laugh. I say, oh, yeah, I'm down the rabbit hole. So it really is me deciding on what the situation is telling me. It's not the situation itself. So that was an excellent catch. And I didn't catch the subtlety of it because I was about 51% aware that it was my responsibility, but I hadn't gotten real clear. So thank you.
Awesome.
I am breathing, by the way. So that's
Yay, breathing with you.
that's a good point. If I stop breathing, then I can question, right? Ask to be shown. Is this awe or is this fear? And it's unfortunate that awe has been replaced by the word fear by the Greek translators.
Yes. There's a purpose in that.
Oh, of course. This world
So
is
breathing with
like
you.
issues, right?
Mm.
This wonderful world, and it is perfect right now, Michael. It's perfectly what has come in to show us what we need to learn right now.
So let's take a breath together and allow this energy of punishment or fear of punishment to surface fully in the presence of love. And in that context, cancel your need for others to approve of you.
Yes, my next worksheet.
And just breathe into that. Notice where the energy is moving in your structure.
My chest area.
Okay. So take 2 or 3 deep breaths, connect those breaths, and just let any old negative cymatic influence in your chest around this idea of not being approved of, just let it soften and let it open in your chest and be liberated. Invite Ruka in. Turn this whole dynamic and breathe.
It's a collapsing and a contraction when I get into fear, judgment, attack.
So then remember that the words, the community of heaven within is the community of love, and it is the kingdom of expansion.
Right.
Allow expansion here now with that. Allow the new flow of active present love that your physiology is ready to handle and make space for, and allow it to come in fully.
You know, when I collapse and when I contract, I get kyphosis really badly.
Mm.
And what that says to me, what my body is saying to me, you are out of alignment with life. Which brings
Breathe.
Right. And your whole expression of the spinal column as an antenna is just like, wow, so helpful for me. Thank you, sir.
So notice that it's safe now in this space to expand into the whole space that you're inhabiting there right now. And notice that the power person dynamic of having to push your energy back in and shut it down or instruct you to do that, you can totally let go of and just soften and breathe into a fully expanded space in your own physiology and around your own physiology. And that your presence is welcomed there.
And you know, Michael, I've been thinking that I had to do all this stuff to correct my back and to increase my breathing. So I've got it backwards. I can just let life in.
Remember Elsa's song in
Frozen?
Frozen. Let it go, let it go. Now it's safe to let it go. And notice that the power person is not there to push it back in.
Except
And as you breathe, stay with that expanding breath and energetically invite the power person into that space of your expansion. And perhaps let her know that the expansion of your energy into her space is safe for both you and her.
isn't it interesting that my stricture of breath is on the exhale?
Got to hold on, got to contract and shrink away from. Yeah, that makes sense.
I saw this when I was teaching yoga in Canada in 2003. I was beginning to notice about the breathing, my own and others, and especially the constrictions. And I began to notice that the ones that held their breath, because I had done some Tai Chi and stuff as well, tended to be the power person. And they held it on the out breath. And the ones that tend to be the victim, of which I was very familiar of being the victim, they tended to hold their breath on the in-breath.
Interesting.
And I thought that was fascinating. And what I realized is in martial arts, when you go to attack, you don't want any air in your lungs because you could get hit and the lungs could collapse.
Mm.
And on the in-breath, I noticed for me in Touch for Health, they had what they called the teapot syndrome, which is when they went to muscle check the person, they would get really rigid, and it would
Right.
be a teapot that you were pouring tea out of as they fought because they were holding their breath on the in-breath.
So notice what's happening at the top of your exhale, up into the roof of your mouth, and up into the upper part of your head as you exhale. And let the release happen there. And I see that we've got Terry with her hand up, so I'm going to bring Terry into the conversation if that's okay to you. With you, she may have something to share with us.
Oh, I'd love it.
Okay.
I'll keep breathing.
All right. Well, we'll breathe with you. And Terry, welcome, young lady. How are you? Are you there, Terry? Hey there. Welcome, young lady. I hear you. Well, she disappeared.
Yeah, that's what I was having problems on Dr. Tim. Other people could hear Dr. Tim just fine. Nobody was showing up in the queue. I had to check in a couple of times before.
Yeah. Okay, Terry's back. Let's try again.
Wonderful.
Okay, Terry, we did hear you there for a second, and then you disappeared.
She might have to check back in.
Are you there?
We're here. We got you. Welcome, young lady.
Okay. I can't hear you, but I can see the script, so I'll go ahead and ask my question.
Go for it.
So I'm not even really sure to start with this. So at the Mind Shifters session that we did this past Saturday and Sunday,
Right.
the information came up to me during the still point breathing about awareness about my dad. So my dad, being an alcoholic, not a violent or abusive in any way, just drank too much. And then the awareness that came to me was that he was suffering too. So this is something that my judgment and my disgust of that situation as a teenager prevented me from seeing anything else. And I realize that this disgust is often a feeling that I experience about other topics as well. So on Tuesday night, I dropped into, tell me about this other person in my life. What, just what do I need to know? What am I not seeing? And it was very similar, but the root was about self-hatred. And so, which I was feeling quite a bit of after this awareness that I experienced on the weekend. Like, how could I have been so cruel? Why did I, think of him in this way? All the things. So I really started checking into articles about self-hatred and the ego wanting to basically kill me and these types of things. I'm not sure how to do a worksheet on myself.
So basically, you name yourself a number 1C. You start the worksheet out recognizing I, Terry, who am love, am feeling self-hatred. Well, gee, am I feeling self-hatred? No, that's not a feeling. That's a thought. What am I feeling? Are you feeling sad? Afraid?
I think it's disgust.
Disgust, okay. So disgust, and then what's the thought about self? That there's...
How could you be so cruel?
Okay. And the situation, so number 1C then is your own name, and what's the situation?
The situation is me disgusting on my dad as a teenager.
Okay. So then move to the, you got the willingness state. I'm willing to go through the physical, mental, emotional symptoms of healing. What's the punishment towards self?
Towards self. Well, I'm attacking myself, ignoring, not listening to myself,
Okay.
not trusting myself.
Okay, I make note of all of those. And then what's the goal you hold for self?
The goal. I always have trouble with the goal.
Well, in an ideal, let's take that whole circumstance with you as a teenager and dad and what your thoughts are. If you could rewrite the script to yourself, Terry, as a teenager, Terry, if only you would have, what would this scenario be? What would you say to that teenager?
Let me think. I would want to be more loving to myself.
Okay.
More accepting.
So that would be it. So I do both of those goals. More loving to self, more accepting of self. and then proceed from there.
Okay. Okay. That is very helpful. I see that we're over time, and I appreciate so much you taking this call at the last minute. I will begin there and hopefully be able to catch the show again tomorrow. Thank you.
Awesome. We'll hold the space.
And thank you. That was perfect
Okay.
for me.
Was that on cue? That's awesome.
Oh,
So I have a thought, Celinda,
yes.
of a mind shifter for you.
Oh,
If you've got your pen handy.
I'm getting one right now. Okay.
The more I perceive people disapproving of me,
Wait.
the more I perceive people disapproving of me, the easier it is for me to remember to breathe
I love it.
and embrace myself fully as the presence of love. Remember to breathe and embrace myself fully as the presence of love.
Let me read this back to you, Michael. The more I perceive of people disapproving of me, I'll take that out. The more I perceive people disapproving of me, the easier it is for me to remember to breathe and embrace myself fully as the presence of love.
Yay, you got it, young lady.
That I am. May I add that?
That's perfect. Absolutely. Let me add another word too, that I am the cherished presence of love.
Okay. That will get it. Maybe it would help Terry too.
Cool. Awesome. All right, ladies, we are over time. And so I'll say thank you for joining us. And Terry too. As a kid in school, I had a classmate named Terry too. So, anyway, thanks for resonating those brain cells, Celinda. Everybody have the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. Take care. Bye-bye.